how I tried to outline the three basic questions. Are we going to, I guess we have, do anything? Or I guess Mike has put out one option, which is to look at boundary changes across the district before doing anything, right? K-12.
Yep.
Before doing anything, including not retaining ninth grade at the junior highs.
I want to do K-12. I don't have a problem with doing something at ninth grade.
Oh, okay. Well, then that would be option 2 here. So the first thing would be, so do you have anybody who would say do nothing? Do I have anybody that is advocating for doing nothing? Lane? Okay, so that being said,
Well,
I'm
sorry, finish the thought, because
is anyone who is proposing that we delay continuing to explore this while we look at boundary changes K-12? We don't do it, including not keeping any ninth graders at Northwest. See if that makes sense? Okay, so that being said, we're looking at either a boundary change or not. And if a boundary change, who and when, correct? Right. Okay, so a boundary change or not, and if we're going to make a boundary change, what students are we going to change and when are they going to be changed? That being said, Lane, I think there was a few pieces of information we had asked you for. Did you get those notes?
With the building blocks, this was Tim, the most aggressive scenario, and run some free and reduced. And I think that's something that's really doable. Gail had said, could you come up with siblings? It may have to be an estimate, because the last time
Estimate is fine, just
the last time we
something
did
that gives
this,
us a
we had to go through that student by student. You got it worked out already?
You got a
Oh.
plan?
Great, okay.
Hey, that was a lot of hard work they just did.
I won't have to retire now. Impact of the transfer policy between city and west, and that will be soft, but we can try to come up with something like that. Those were the three that was there any other information? Mike had said we have not, that was something on the free and reduced discrepancies. But
Well, I had 3 things written down, but I thought it was getting the cohort numbers. Maybe I'm missing that. Can we do that or not?
The grade progression cohort.
Grade
number.
progression?
Actual students.
I mean, actual students, yeah, that's what would be included. I think we'd do the same thing in the building blocks to see what our free and reduced would be. We'd actually look at actual students. I
And
think
the
that's what you're
numbers.
talking about.
The numbers
Right.
might be different as
Right,
well, not just the
right.
percentage of dues.
And then I'd like the numbers for Craig and Greg's plan and the North Liberty plan.
You mean by numbers,
Both of those
right,
proposals have an implementation strategy,
okay.
but I think we should be using the same numbers so we've got something to compare it to.
So you want me to, you just want me to compare those plans then to what we have?
Well, are those
in a
numbers
sense?
in those plans accurate as you're building
okay.
the thing? I mean, just like we're doing for the
Right.
other suggestions, this would just be suggestions 3 and 4.
I'll have to, I think most people worked off that large spreadsheet that we gave to you, Mike, tonight again. So I'll have to check with them for sure, but I would think that those numbers were fairly similar.
The other thing we talked about, Lane, I'm sorry, Jim. Go ahead.
I want to go back on numbers, because I think we could get different sets of numbers out there because they're figured differently. So I just want to make sure I have what you're thinking about. When we would talk about the cohort groups, there's 2 ways to do that. One is we talked about just moving up the current numbers into. The other is, which doesn't include any type of cohort survival or anything like that. We could also use the University of Iowa, the Rushton, that moves them up, but also factors in there that survival, that 3-year average survival.
Yeah.
Is that,
Well, that's the point I was getting at, because I think if you just roll up the numbers, then there are some changes that are fairly regular
that's correct.
that occur to the numbers as we go from.
So we could use university numbers for that.
I would think so, but I defer to the rest of you for that. But I think if you don't do that, you're gonna have some pretty inaccurate,
Yeah, and then that'll also be the most accurate on the free and reduced lunch.
right?
Okay.
I guess the other thing is, I'd just like to build in time for the board to look at this more. We haven't had a lot of time to look at
Right.
it. Some of
No.
this we just saw tonight, so. And can we have a process where we would individually get additional questions to Lane, and he could then maybe with the next Friday update or whatever, let us all know what everybody's questions were. And how
Should
that
route
might be
those through Kim. I'm going to be gone next week, but
Yeah, well, whatever. I mean,
I would also, like to see the information that we've just asked for as soon as you have it.
Sure.
Get it to
Sure,
us so
yeah.
that we're not looking at it for the first
Right.
time at the next board.
the reason I'm
I
being defensive there
I-
was
I
put
did
together-
mean that as a criticism.
Okay.
Just don't sit on it, if you've got to
What-
get it to us early.
Did you say, Lane,
We won't.
in your list of things that you talked about, did you say some way to look a little bit more clearly at the numbers if we did not move this year's seventh graders?
I think that was a question someone asked, and certainly I could do that, too.
I mean, I know it's here, but it's
Yes.
kind of hard to figure out
I
what
can
that
do
would
that,
look like.
too, yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask the question, I guess, when do we put in to all of this also cost? Because, we've just come from a very difficult process this year. We're looking at another difficult process next year, and this doesn't look that many years farther down the road. And so I guess, at what point is the cost plugged into here in making some of these decisions?
Are you talking about the kind of projection that I've been hearing that Paul was preparing for us?
Yes.
Yes.
There was that disclaimer that Lane put at the beginning of it also, which is
What
if we can afford to do this.
Right.
So,
Does Paul have that
I had a note about
projection
Paul
prepared
putting a
for us?
projection and a timeline together with figures.
We can have him put his projections according to the timeline that I have now, where we're
So-
at. What we're trying to do is, there'll be increased costs opening a new school, but there are also increased costs of increasing number of students. They're greater.
Right. So
Well,
we
we-
want the comparison of
Right.
those two, and the comparison of both of those two current costs, so that we know what the effective change in our operating costs need to be to get there.
Right, and we also have an addition to North Central Junior High not far down the road also, so.
It seemed to me at the last board meeting that Paul pretty much had that prepared already.
Kim, would you like to
If he's got that, then he could
I won't let him
send it
sit
to
on it.
us. Yeah.
Actually, a quick question for Tim. You had asked for what was the particular thing you were asking about with the free and reduced lunch numbers?
What I wanted to see was, I think what I asked for, the transition plan has data in here about the free and reduced lunch percentages of each of these building blocks, but I wanted to see kind of back to this spreadsheet where we see student numbers in the buildings. I wanted to see
Impact.
how the schools were impacted by the changes that are proposed.
Okay. I was wondering if the secondary schools are close to that threshold that was talked about in terms of what the state, the state looks at. Can you talk about that some more in terms of what the threshold is?
Typically, it's, when we had our last visit, if a school is 20% higher than the district average. So our district average is, where are we, 27, 28%?
That's it.
So it'd be any one that's over 47%.
So is that broken up into elementary, secondary, or is that across all schools?
That's our total across all of our schools, the 27, 28%. And then you look at individual schools.